And, and when I got rid of the criticism, then the pain actually subsided. And granted, I didn't have pain because of inflammation, because I'm in an anti-inflammatory plan. And I know that, what I was doing wasn't from inflammation, but the pain was, hello, you need to work on these emotional things from childhood, because that is keeping you from stepping into this message of it's beyond just the physical anti-inflammatory plan.
Welcome to Self-Heal with Dr. Irene, where you'll learn powerful tools from world-class experts to heal yourself in all areas of your life. Your health and energy, relationships, career, finances, and more. Welcome to the Self-Heal podcast. And today I have a repeat expert guest because we had so much fun last time and we got talking about more nuances and layers. And we're like, oh, you just got to come back. And that is Joanna Chodorowska. Now, Joanna is a holistic nutritionist, a pain and inflammation expert, author, speaker, founder of Nutrition in Motion. She's an extreme athlete and lover of life. Now, Joanna guides athletes to relieve their pain and health challenges so they can love their body and active life even more fully. So welcome back, Joanna.
It's a pleasure to be back and actually talk about, the other nuances that people just don't realize are connected to their health journey.
Absolutely. And what we were talking about, Joanna, even like before this, and I'm like, no, we really got to start the record button because this is gold.
Yeah, well, I wanted to share it with you, so it's like, okay, I want to today. This is exactly what we're talking about. Like the other parts of pain, like the things that we don't realize are contributing to our pain.
Exactly. So for our listeners, everybody knows about the physical basis of pain. And what almost no one recognizes and understands, including doctors, I might add, I can vouch for this.
You were there once too, right?
Right. Is that, well, I came from a different background, and still, having gone through all the trainings, I guarantee that conventional medicine does not talk about this. And that is the emotional, mental, energetic causes and contributors to pain, inflammation, and other chronic conditions in your body. And that is what Joanna and I were talking about, Joanna being a pain expert, an inflammation expert, and I with my background, and we both have a history of personal pain and inflammation. So we can speak from both professional and personal experience that your unconscious mind, for instance, will create diversions, distractions. In other words, if it feels that there is some kind of mental, emotional, energetic pain that is too strong, like too great for you to bear, or anger, think of like the Hulk hulking within you that may threaten to hurt somebody else, it will distract you with some kind of physical condition. And the easiest and fastest way, let's face it, pain gets your attention,
Absolutely.
right? Is pain. And it can just as easily be an autoimmune condition. It can be some other chronic condition as well. And in my humble opinion, and over 27 years of clinical experience now, I came to the conclusion a while back that at least 95% of all chronic conditions, including pain, are either greatly contributed to or actually caused by physical or mental, emotional, or energetic.
And I call it spiritual too.
Spiritual, yes. To me, I add that into the energetic, and absolutely. And then afterwards, after I came to that conclusion, I found other doctors like Dr. Jarn Sarno, I'm trying to say his name,
right,
who wrote The Divided Mind. He came to this conclusion as well. He called it tension myositis syndrome, that some of our most common conditions like tennis elbow or so on are actually he called it TMS. And then Joanna and I got talking about this, and she's like, I know, right?
Yeah. Well, and I actually saw one of John Sarno's movies. There was a documentary on him that here he was, this back doctor, and he was not doing back medicine at all, the way that, conventional medicine had taught it. And it was really that he found that back pain was all unresolved rage. And and I think the movie is called All the Rage. So it's really, really quite fascinating. It's like, okay, here's another proof that a conventional doctor says, you know what, this is not just the physical manifestation from a physical cause. It is really rooted in those unresolved emotional things. And we have to give people tools in order to resolve these issues, and just breathing and grounding sometimes is enough to at least stop the fighting. But in the work that you and I do, it's really identifying, okay, well, what's triggering that rage? What's triggering the emotional thing? Because the pain is just trying to get your attention to do something differently than you have.
Yes.
And with my hip pain, it's been, like Saturday, I bumped into a guy that I haven't seen in a while riding bikes in opposite directions. And we stopped and chatted. He's like, so how's your hip doing? I'm like, well, got arthritis in the other one. And I've been doing all this emotional stuff because, I had to really let go of all that criticism from childhood. And his first response was like, Joanna, you need to so be over that. And it's like, well, intellectually I was, but my body didn't forget. And that's what I needed to do is I needed to release those issues that were stuck in the tissues. And when we got rid of all that congestion, the hip started to feel better. And, and when I got rid of the criticism, then the pain actually subsided. And granted, I didn't have pain because of inflammation, because I'm in an anti-inflammatory plan. And I know that, what I was doing wasn't from inflammation, but the pain was, hello, you need to work on these emotional things from childhood, because that is keeping you from stepping into this message of it's beyond just the physical anti-inflammatory plan. It is the emotional stuff. And then even 2 months ago, it was my grandmother coming to me in a message saying, you know what, this is not your burden. I'm going to cut it off from my end. Well, it wasn't for another 2-3 weeks or so that I realized, I'm like, I need to cut that burden off. I met her when I was 5. She had arthritis. She had all sorts of pain. I was an intuitive. And I'm like, here, let me take some of that burden from you so that you feel better. Well, 50 years later, it's part of my hip pain.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And that is the key, is that in my experience, if I started treating somebody or working with somebody, and you said the same thing, and if you're doing everything that it needs to be done on a physical level to get them better, and they're not getting better, there's something deeper. Or what will happen is the pain will move around. Right.
Well, and sometimes the pain moving is not necessarily a bad thing, but until you actually resolve that other underlying deeper issue, the pain is just going to show up someplace else.
Or it'll go away and then come back.
Right.
That's the other part of it. And when I started putting that together and going, I need to work with the whole person, that's actually when I personally decided that it was time to shift from a physical practice model to the training model that I do with one-on-one or small groups. And that is because I know you're the same. It's like, I've had clients from around the world with severe pain, and I'm not physically seeing them.
Right.
And they still get better in record time. And when they haven't been able to get better for years, right? And that is what happens when you look after the whole person, the whole enchilada.
And you are, you're a soul in a human body, but it's the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. If you're not addressing all 4 of them, I mean, you're all those.
Exactly. So, and you gave some great examples of how we can even take on the pain of others, right? Especially if we're by nature are programmed to be caregivers and nurturers, right? Where we need to make others happy. So even unconsciously saying, here, I'll make you feel better. It's my job to make you happy. So I'm going to take your pain, or I'm going to take your anger, or I'm going to take, right?
Whatever the burden is.
Just pile it on. And if this sounds
make it a lighter load for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is so true that when you start clearing this and recognizing that it's not yours to carry, it's not your burden to carry. We all have our life journey and we all have our own burdens, because that's how we live, learn, and grow.
Right.
Is through our burdens, our adversity. Then it makes things, as you say, so much lighter when you're not like Atlas trying to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. A lot of
reasons why people have neck pain, because they're taking care of everyone else except for themselves.
Exactly. And for those of you who think that it's woo-woo to talk about this, I'm going to bring in a very scientific term, and it's called epigenetics. And so when I work with clients clearing trauma, for instance, yes, we work through their personal trauma, and it can start with adulthood and working back to childhood. And then we go to the intergenerational. And intergenerational is where perhaps your parents went through something or suffered, as you say, some kind of condition. So maybe they went through a war, or they
in my family, it was definitely, generations of war. Because, being Polish, if you think about the country of Poland, we've got the Baltic Sea right at the top of it. The Russians, the Prussians, the Germans, anybody that you can think of. It's like, we want that seaport. So they were constantly fighting over the land. And so I had 11 generations of destruction, betrayal from allies, betrayal from God, betrayal from, maybe even fellow countrymen. But it was destruction, because, even in World War II, Hitler raised all of Warsaw, just completely turned it into rubble. So all that grief, all that shock, that destruction, the betrayal, that was part of that burden that I had taken on. And it was in my hip. And guess what? It created congestion in my hip. And then it's like, okay, when we clear that, I had more freedom of movement.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that trauma can be what's passed down directly.
Right.
Like, in other words, the fear responses and those feelings that your parents and grandparents had, like anybody you had direct contact with and who helped form you and program you. And as you mentioned, Joanna, it can also be epigenetic PTSD, as I've coined, because you can carry the trauma of ancestors you don't even know. In research that in rats, it taken it back to 7 generations so far. And that's where the trauma, the fears, the emotions, actually modify the expression of your DNA. And they've shown that fear responses can be passed down. And right. So, among other things, in
rats, it's at least 3 generations that it gets passed on.
I think it's 7.
If you haven't been exposed to the same stimulus and the same trigger, like it takes 3 generations to clear if you haven't been exposed to the same trigger. So, but we're constantly being exposed to the same trigger, so it keeps going. And I can tell you that I got 11 generations of it imprinted in me. And I call it genetic imprint, because
there you go.
Same thing, different words, but it was imprinted. And now it's my part of the work that I do is like, okay, it might've been imprinted, but it's not serving me. It's actually it's destroying me. So let's help the body heal and get rid of all the layers that are actually using up energy in things that are not helping my body do what it knows how to do, heal. And I have arthritis in this hip. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to have arthritis for very long.
Exactly. And the first step is always the awareness. I always say awareness is 80% of the battle and the solution. And just by being open to what Joanna and I are talking about is you're 80% of the way there. Just even if you don't know, you could be adopted and not know your personal history. Just understanding that this can be a thing and maybe impacting you goes a long way to understanding and giving you hope and empowering you to know that it is possible to clear it, whether it's pain, whether it's some kind of chronic physical condition, right?
GI distress is a common one that I work on as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's like, you know what, I have one client who has spinal spondylosis or something like that. And I can't remember exactly the name, but it's a genetic thing. And her mom
Spondylosis.
has it. Spondylosis. Thank you. And she's only 23. And so she came to me and she's like, I got this stuff going on. And I said, well, my job is really to help you not turn those genes on so that you never express that condition.
Exactly.
And so we've done the energy work. We've done the anti-inflammatory work, changed her nutrition, but it's also, really clearing those layers and the attachments that have that. And at 23, it's not quite as much as I had at 55. So don't wait till you're 55. If you can help yourself, sooner, it would be good.
Well, and that is the beautiful part about this awareness, I feel, is when you people in general say, oh, arthritis runs in my family. Cancer runs in my family. I remember one
diabetes runs in my family.
Diabetes runs. In other words, whenever you say that, and I've had like young people say, oh, my arthritis is acting up. Well, no, it's because they're used to hearing other generations talk about that. And they're already being programmed, my arthritis. Yeah. They're already owning it. I teach my clients the next step is to talk about it outside of themselves, like a reality TV show. Instead of saying, I am in pain or my arthritis or my pain, it's like, oh, there's pain. That's interesting. Like just with curiosity. It's like it's like what putting it outside.
It's what Joe Dispenza talks about, kind of observing from the outside.
Yeah, exactly. Because whenever you own it, it's saying, this is part of my identity. As soon as you say, I am, words have power, just like I am depressed. No, you are not depressed. It's not your identity. There may be a feeling of depression. There may even be a temporary state of depression. You are not, that's not your identity. And I love how the French, and I don't know how it is in Polish, the French have a beautiful way of saying, j'ai faim, j'ai froid, it's like, I have hunger, I have cold. They don't say I am hungry, I am cold. And so there's that taking it out of the realm of it's a permanent part of my, I was basically born with this. Well, no, you weren't. So right. You can take it even that one step further and say, oh, isn't that interesting? There's that pain again in the hip. I wonder what it's trying to tell me.
Yeah. And I've made such strides with mine. Once I actually realized, I'm like, you know what? I do have arthritis, but that doesn't mean that I'm not an athlete. I'm still an athlete. Right now I have arthritis, but I'm doing what I can to help my body heal. And that's the one part that I just really believe strongly that the body can heal. And even this morning when I went riding my bike, most people, when they have an arthritic condition, especially in the hip and they're cyclists, it just goes downhill, downhill, and downhill and just gets worse. And this time I was like, you know what? I had a hip replacement already, but I am not doing that this time because this is now my opportunity to clear all those other layers and really prove that the body can heal. And when I went this morning, I asked God, like, what do I need today? I can't even remember exactly what the message was. He's like, you know what? You still have some other burdens that you need to clear.
Mm.
And when I went writing, that is a lot of times that's like my best meditation. That's when I like connected to God. I'm connected to nature. I'm connected to beauty. I'm connected to my soul. And I'm just out there playing, you know? And to me, it's all just play on the bike. And where I live, the roads are beautiful. So that helps. And somewhere in the middle of that ride, it's like this memory of my mother's fear of me always getting hurt as an athlete just popped up. And it's like, oh, you know what? This is not your fear. This is hers. Mm-hmm. You can let her have that. You can do the hopo'ono, like peace begins with me and no one else. I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. And it was just, I let that fear go. And then there was other times where I in the same session, I had to actually forgive myself, because when we had Parents' Day during the summer softball season, my parents never showed up. My dad was always traveling. He was my biggest fan, quite honestly. So when he was in town, he would not only he would not drag himself, but he would come and he would literally drag my sisters to come watch. And my mother never, very rarely came, and this kept going even to adulthood. When I was a triathlete, I would do the Chicago Triathlon. Somebody would be visiting from out of town, whether it's work related or something else. And he's like, oh, my daughter's racing. Would you like to come? So he was always my biggest supporter. But when he's not in town, he can't support me because he's physically not able to. And I was okay with that, but I was always so upset. And I had done plenty of work on this, that I was always so upset that my mom never showed up. And today that memory came up and I'm like, am I still like bummed out about that? Well, it turned out it was that fear that I was still holding on to. And it was me that needed to forgive that 7-year-old child that, like, it's all going to be okay. You didn't know how to ask mom to say, hey, mom, can you just show up for 10 minutes? That's all I need. It's really important for me if you could just show up for 10 minutes. And she probably would have come up with some way of doing it, or she would have explained that, why she really wasn't able to come. But I didn't learn that she was just fearful of me getting hurt until about 6 years ago. So that's a lot of time, from 7 till, 47, or actually it was more like, something like that. I really just held on to that fear of getting hurt, and, and it was not mine. It's not my burden. It's my mother's.
Well, and that 7-year-old child didn't even truly, you may have sensed the fear, just like a dog can sense fear. And I'm not calling you a dog, you know what I mean. And at the same time, that 7-year-old can just take that as rejection. She doesn't love me. I'm not important enough to her. I'm not worthy. My
athletics is not important, and it's not worthy, and it's not an acceptable role to be playing in my family. She does not accept me as an athlete. And that was really the story that I had told myself for a very long time.
Yep. And she was your primary role model. So your primary role model was saying, this is not important. So if I don't consider it important, then you shouldn't consider it important either.
Well, and she had the idea too that girls should not be athletes. So I heard that plenty of times, like, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm like, but that's all I want to do. That is me.
Exactly.
And 55, I'm like, I'm still playing on the bike and I still want to get back to playing on the tennis court and playing, whatever sport it is that I want to play.
And I have absolutely no doubt that you're going to. Joanna, I have loved this conversation, and I really am so happy that our listeners have had this treat of perhaps, being able to open up the lid and look at some secrets and peek in and see some secrets and give them hope.
Yeah.
Right. Because whenever you have that, well, I can't do this because of my arthritis, or arthritis runs in my family, so I have no choice or to get it. It's like you are automatically giving up your power. So we're here to give you back your power, give you permission to take back your power, I should say, and understand that it is possible. It is probable. And both Joanna and I have healed ourselves of significant pain issues and other conditions and helped our clients to do so. And so please know that you can too.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that, arthritis does run in my family, both arthritis, the osteoarthritis and the rheumatoid. But I am the only one that has, with my three sisters don't. So it's kind of like, okay, it's got to be more than just this hereditary thing. And that was my thing, where it's like, okay, it might be hereditary, but there's a reason why I got it. And there's a reason why I need to work through it. And I need to get to the bottom of why it is that mine expressed itself while others may not have. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Thank you so much, Joanna, and really for helping me shed light on this topic that this is a new conversation. And I know that we're going to have you back more so that we can delve even more deeply into this. And I know we've come to the end of this time. I know.
We just should create our own course to really help people unravel. I call it, I help people unravel the layers to their pain.
There you go.
It is layers, and we just help to get there faster because, you and we've developed that intuitive ability. We've also really developed the ability to converse or conversate, whatever the word you want, with our body. So when the pain comes up, you and I know, like, all right, what's going on? No, really, what's going on? What am I holding on to or what's surfacing now that is my opportunity to clear that so I can move forward? And even today, I was running a few errands and my hip started like acting up, and I'm like, that is not my fear. You guys can keep trying to come back and give it to me. Hey, it is not coming back. Goodbye. Thank you for your help in the process, but you got to go.
Exactly. Exactly. So folks, stay tuned for the next edition when Joanna comes back, and we'll look forward to that conversation as well. Yes.
And I thank you so much for allowing me to come back to talk about this topic, to really give people more than just hope that they can get through whatever they're going through with the right outlook and the right permission to heal all the layers of their body.
Absolutely. So everyone, take care, and we will talk next time. Thanks for listening to Self Heal with Dr. Irene. Please head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. By doing so, this will help us reach more people with our message. Be sure to visit www.selfheal.life to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. And keep listening for more insights and tools to empower you to heal yourself and enjoy life to the max.